Hello, everyone, and thank you, Tina, Alyosha, and Jakob for inviting us to participate in this symposium. I am, as Jakob already mentioned, one of the 6 members of the collective who is deeply engaged in this so-to-call independent cultural scene here in Croatia. Which means that our practice is oriented towards production of cultural content in terms of research, socially engaged projects, community projects, and so on, and is basically less market oriented. Here I will try to explain in short how our project Old School Ilica that Tina already mentioned and which was conducted during BO50 within the nanotourism team grew into a larger initiative that is now called Made in Platform, and actually how some of its ideas are relevant today when we see this current free market economy and tourism as its byproduct are collapsing. Both projects are a bit, so to say, analog. They are connected to design and crafts as vehicles of production. So to just give like a little bit of a broader context, I have to say and refer to the origins of design as a profession within the modernism, and Victor Papanek, who already in 1972 declared that there are only a few professions more harmful than industrial design. And at that time, this was advertising design, whereas today this statement can be applied to many more design disciplines. Almost anything is designed today to the level that it's almost becoming irrelevant. But unlike design, craft embodies the entire making process. It also, in most cases, craftspeople produce the same products over the years. So, in other words, craft is not market-driven like design is. And there are many reasons why designers are specifically in the last decade or 2 decades turning back to craft, and some do it because they prefer the higher quality of objects. Some primarily address the social implications of manufacturing and emphasize the work of craftspeople based on this embodied knowledge. And some actually find these imperfections in manufacturing process to be beautiful. But in fact, most of us are forced because the processes of production are moving towards east to become actually entrepreneurs ourselves again, and now again control all the stages of the production process, from ideation to distribution, etc. And so we are witnessing these processes in Croatia as well, and maybe this was initially one of the reasons why we started working on this project, Old School Ilica. And just to give you a little bit of a context here, this is our studio, which is based in this street. I already said that it was now hit by an earthquake, so it actually looks even worse. But here you can see all the abandoned craft workshops along the street, which is basically the longest street in Zagreb. It used to be an artisan street back in the past, after the 50s. We actually concentrated on a small portion of Ilica Street. It's from number 50 to 150, so it's like 1 kilometer long. And we actually started mapping the resources in 2014 and looking at material and technical assets and production cycles of the people who are still working there. This actually included a lot of communication with craftspeople and a lot of communication also with the local community in Ilica. And basically what was intended as tool for us to actually put some of our products, because a lot of us in the team are product designers, in distribution, thinking that this is going to be done together with craftspeople, actually grew into something else. It grew into an educational model, which is based on knowledge exchange and sharing resources and building the community network. So basically, we ended up within the nanotourism topic with this model for self-sustainable development of the local community by means of social design. It turned out to be actually a great experiment, and as a consequence, we also developed a book, and we developed some products with local craftspeople. We even extended the network. But so this experience actually somehow urged us to look at other initiatives that were happening also within the region, and to see what is actually going on a larger scale. We formed this initiative, which is called Made In Platform. And this Made in the title of the project refers again to this anonymous and inhumane production of today. It also emphasizes, of course, the position of design and the reference to its source, which is craftsmanship and making. And it seems like today, more than ever, it's important to ask the questions about where something is made, who made it, what is it made of, for whom, where does it come from, etc. So when the project started in 2018, we actually, together with other project partners from 4 countries basically in this region around Croatia, started gathering different perspectives. Our own position of field researchers was intertwined with one of the museums as keepers of heritage. So it's the Museum of Architecture and Design from Ljubljana, then the Museum of Arts and Crafts in Zagreb, but also cultural institutions from Belgrade, from Serbia, Nova Iskra and Mixer, and a craft association from Andelsbuch in Austria, which is called Werkraum Bregenzerwald. So we actually all started acting as collectors and archivists of material and immaterial knowledge in 4 countries, mediators also between designers and craftspeople through workshops and through residency formats, and eventually curators of this Made in Craft and Design Narratives exhibition, which is an outcome of this 2-year process. This exhibition gathers work of designers and their craft collaborators, and it is imagined to instigate the debate about the relationship of design and crafts, but also about the broader topics of preservation of knowledge, the role of technology in production processes, sustainable production, material resources, etc. So this exhibition actually consists of 2 parts. The craft archive part of the exhibition brings actually the selection of 40 knowledge holders and their traditional crafts from Croatia, Slovenia, Austria, and Serbia, who are documented through texts based on unstructured interviews and photography, explaining the background, history, materials, tools, techniques, processes, and so on. So this starting selection of craftspeople, 10 per each country, although small, serves as a showcase for status of local crafts actually in those countries. And these participating craftspeople were chosen for their superior craft knowledge, the level of endangerment of their craft, their representativeness for the area, but also for their geographical position. And so here you can see actually portions from the book that gathers all these people in one coherent archive. from beekeeping to ceramics to then shoemaking, tailoring, alpine cheese making, stove making, to the ones in Belgrade city center who are still producing candies or perfumes. But actually, the most important part of this project, or the second part actually of the project, is the narratives that we tried to create, connecting those craftspeople with the designers. And they actually emerged during this 2-year process, carried by each country separately, addressing issues specific to each local production context. And they are actually the results of different sorts of formats, like workshops and residencies that we all conducted, each separately in our countries. I will briefly go through 2 projects that were conducted, one in Croatia and one in Slovenia. And actually, this exhibition was envisioned as a traveling exhibition, which is now basically stopped because of this whole situation. So we're waiting to see when next it can open. And so the next stop after the premiere in Zagreb this January is actually in Ljubljana, probably sometimes very soon. But one of the questions that I find very important that arose during this process is actually how can design and new technologies change our relationship towards preservation of crafts. And it is manifested through a short film, fictional film, by design studio Unfold and Alexander Humbert, and it's called A Filmmaker Sale, in which we actually follow the story of 2 passionate makers. One is Antun Penezic, who is the last comb maker in Croatia and maybe also in Europe, who is 82 years old and who has no successor. And the other one is actually a cobot. It's a robot, a brand new robot, which is dedicated to follow in his footsteps and learn as much as it can from Antun in order to preserve this age-old craft from disappearing. So the 2 protagonists in this tale are actually questioning humankind's relation with both crafts and technology. And this tale challenges its audience to reconsider their assumptions. Do we need to preserve an age-old craft? When is something handmade? Why do we value labor-intensive handmade objects, but not the labor involved? Why do we fear robots taking over our work if there is so much work that nobody is interested in pursuing? In addition to this fictional movie, there's also a series of interviews from renowned craft historians, mathematicians, and people who are deeply involved in the robotics. And actually, what was interesting is this material that Anton, this comb maker, is also still using, which now the designers are, in addition, trying to map with artificial intelligence and see how this can be preserved for the future. Also, this embodied knowledge, not only the one that is actually now kept and preserved and conservated in the museum. Another project that was interesting was questioning, and it comes out of the studio from Austria, actually, Misha Traxler, who in collaboration with this stonemason Beno Ogrin, curated by Maja Vartjan and Svetka Požar in Museum of Architecture and Design. This was a project that was asking a question if design can reconnect with raw materials through craft. And the designers and the stone mason created actually a series of objects under the title Ratio, that work as communication tools, revealing tangible data about stones and their hidden metallic mineral components. So each piece in this series reveals the proportion of metal contained in a specific metal ore by combining it with its metallic equivalent in the form of metal sheeting. The size of a metal sheet, 3 millimeter stick, is always as big as the resulting material one would get when traditionally processing the stone into the metal. And there were other questions that were actually raised along the way. For instance, can social design stimulate local production, as we already discussed within or were discovering within the old school Ilica project? How can research into locally sourced materials address wider social, environmental, and political conditions? This was conducted through a series of experiments in Slovenia, where Lucas Vegvert was a group of students digging into the material of earth and actually trying to collect different samples and see what can be used within the architectural field, also together with BC architects. Then again, what can designers learn from the practical knowledge of craftspeople and their relationship through objects? I'm just running through this because there is actually little time to explain each of the projects in detail. But to summarize, actually, I will try to refer to several things that are in close connection both to the notion of craftsmanship and design that the project has in focus, but also some of the important principles that refer to nanotourism and newly formed circumstances based on this COVID outbreak. So actually, it feels like now we are in favorable circumstances. Someone already mentioned that we are actually at the moment living nanotourism. On a city level, for instance, in Zagreb, people are claiming public space again. They are sitting in the parks. They are rediscovering the river. Small communities in the neighborhood are starting to reconnect and communicate. They support performances of circus outside of the window within their building block. They solidarize with the vulnerable members of the society. Again, on the Croatian coastline, there are no cruisers anymore, so the tourists are not stopping by. But the local food is back. The overblown prices of real estate and rents are going down. So it seems actually that it is a good moment to rebuild the community. Because there is a need to bring life back to the city centers and start building by tourism and capitalism actually disrupted communities. And one way of doing that is by bringing back the production back to the city in form of small shops, craft workshops, and markets. There is also a need to relearn everyday skills, and by relearning everyday skills, I do not only consider craft but actually we should consider any meaningful work which enables one to enhance their skills and contribute to the community, to quote Richard Sennett. There is also a need to exchange knowledge. Now that the production process is brought back to these designers, we see the decentralization of production. So this situation, in theory, can lead to a shift of power from industrial mass manufacturers to individuals, which is actually happening already in the DIY culture and in the circles of designers who organize open source databases, who are intertwining elements of pre-industrial craft economy with high-tech industrial manufacturing and digital communications networks. And finally, I will quote William Morris from his essay Art Under Plutocracy, who says, and who is, by the way, actually more relevant today than ever, that the pleasure which ought to go with the making of every piece of handicraft has for its basis the keen interest which every healthy man takes in a healthy life, and is compounded, it seems, of three elements: variety, hope of creation, and the self-respect which comes of a sense of usefulness, to which must be added that mysterious bodily pleasure which goes with the deft exercise of the bodily powers. Of course, not everyone is or has the conditions to do so. We are speaking here from a sort of privileged position, but for us who have the opportunity to react and change things, it actually seems like it is a favorable moment now. Okay, thank you.